Okay, I think today we can start with the test ng. Do you guys see my screen? I'm just sharing my screen. Okay, so test ng is what? Test ng is a framework. Test ng is nothing but a framework, right? Okay, I think someone was asking yesterday. Just give me a minute. Okay, I think you are asking for the dashboard, right? You can note down this. This would be your XPath. Okay, this would be XPath, or you can even take another XPath also if you wanted. So I said once you guys log in, you guys have written some coding for login assignment, right? I said you try to do the assertion and make sure you have, make sure that dashboard is selected or not. How do you verify that? I said go to your dashboard screen and find out this thing should appear. If this is appearing means you are in the dashboard screen. So whenever you log in, it should highlight the dashboard and it should display this particular dashboard. So for that, you can take this as a XPath. So you need to put one XPath condition where just I'm saying go to / div tag @ID equal to content /div /h1. You try yourself. If you're not getting it, what you guys can do is you can go use your IDE. So these are the XPath. Directly you can say CSS equal to H1. That will give you CSS equal to H1 because that is a header one. You guys can understand if you right click and inspect. This is coming under which tag? It is under header one tag. You just say CSS equal to header one. Even you will get this dot get text. Get text will return what? It is going to return you the get text, whatever the text it is. This dashboard XPath you have to write. So once you get the XPath, you just say dot get text. It will get the text that would be your actual result. Actual result should contain what? Dashboard. What are you expecting? It should display the dashboard. So both are matching, then you are going to pass your test case. There are multiple XPaths you have here. Okay, you can say just say hash x header one XPath, even you will get the same thing. Okay, just try to use that for the assignment. Okay, always remember whenever we go for real-time automation project, we'll always have the assertions. We always have the assertion. So whenever you write some assignment, make sure whenever you guys are doing some assignment, make sure you are putting the assertions for sure. Okay, now let's start with understanding with the TestNG. TestNG is nothing but a open source automated TestNG framework. So we already discussed about one framework, right? So what is the framework we discussed? Did we discuss any framework? No? You hold on. We discussed, think. You understood? We discussed framework. Collections. What I said, collections is a. You said no, we have not discussed. We discussed, right? We discussed collections is a framework. What is a framework? The ready-made architecture. The framework is what? Ready-made architecture, which are basically utilize it. Even I gave dosa batter example also so that you guys can remember it easily. Just buy a dosa batter and cook it and eat it. As simple as ready-made. Just ready-made. Framework is nothing but a ready-made architecture. Framework is nothing but a ready-made architecture. You just have to go and start using them. So TestNG is also one of the framework. Collection is one framework. TestNG is also One framework. In coming sessions, we'll also learn about Cucumber. Cucumber is also what? Cucumber is also one framework. Whenever I say framework, always remember it's a ready-made architecture which they already have so many things defined. We just have to go and use them. We just have to go and use them. So TestNG is also one of the framework. It is a open source. Open source, you guys know, right? What is the open source? Which can be used on free of cost. Open source means free of cost. Just go to Google, download it and start using it. Open source coming as a free of source. So whereas NG stands for next generation, people might think it is a testing. Testing is different. Test NG is different. You know the spelling, right? Testing means you will have spelling like this, testing, ING. But here what they are saying, test NG. Don't, by mistake, you try to read it, we think it's a testing. Most of the people think it's like a testing, but if you observe, there is no I here. Test NG, test NG. NG stands for next generation. Okay. And TestNG is similar to JUnit, but it is not a JUnit extension. TestNG is what? Like a JUnit. What is a JUnit? JUnit is also another framework. JUnit is also another framework like TestNG. We have multiple framework like you have a JUnit, you have TestNG, you have NUnit. JUnit is used for Java-based unit testing. NUnit is used for .NET based unit testing purpose. So TestNG can be similar to JUnit, but it is not a JUnit extension. What we are trying to say is, we are trying to say that it is not a JUnit extension. It is inspired by JUnit. It is inspired by JUnit. It is designed to be better than JUnit. It is trying to be designed to be better than JUnit, especially when testing integrated classes. Integration testing we already discussed, right? Similar to that. So TestNG is designed to cover all categories of test. TestNG is going to cover all categories of test like unit testing, functional testing, end-to-end testing, and integration testing. You guys can use this TestNG for all the purposes. Okay. Now TestNG requires JDK version 5 or higher. So whenever you wanted to use the TestNG, you need to have a JDK. JDK means Java Development Kit, which you already have, I think. You already installed your Java. I think you are doing some programming in Java. So you don't need to install JDK again. It is already there for you. Okay. So what are the benefits of using the annotation? Now, when it comes to collections framework, what are we trying to put? For collection framework, we are trying to put all predefined classes, interfaces, and their implementations like array list, vector, linked list. All these are predefined classes, and all these classes are implementing what? Interfaces like list interface, collection interface, iterable interface. So they are already having some interfaces, and classes are implementing those interfaces, and we are going to use all those predefined classes and the methods. But when it comes to TestNG, like classes and methods, these guys are having something called annotations. TestNG, we'll discuss what is annotation, what are the different annotations we have. We will discuss. TestNG having different annotations, right? So what are the use of using annotations, or following are the benefits of using the annotation? So TestNG identifies the methods it is interested by in looking up annotation. Hence, method names are not restricted to any pattern or format. Now, always remember, anything you write in TestNG, that you are going to write it inside the function only. Anything you are writing inside the any code you wanted to write, you should write that code inside the functions only. I already told you multiple times, functions plays the major role. When we are talking about basics of any programming language, I already explained functions are going to play the major role. When it comes to TestNG, anything you write, single line of the code, that code will go inside the function only. Without function, we generally do not write anything in the TestNG. When you even go to real-time project, when you even go to your real-time project in your job, everything you write in the function only. Anything you write inside the function. Why we write inside the function? So that others can reuse my code. If they wanted, they can call my function and they can. If I put my login code inside the main, do you think others can use it? I have to put that login code inside the function called login, and others can call my login function. Okay. So we can pass additional parameters to the annotations. We pass the parameters to the functions, right? We provide parameters to the function. Similarly, even for annotations also, we can provide the parameters. Okay. Annotations are strongly typed, so compiler will flag any mistake right away. I think we need not to talk about this feature. Anyhow, we already have the Eclipse. Wherever you guys are doing some compilation issues, the Eclipse is already trying to give you, right? And test classes no longer need to extend anything, that you can ignore it. So what are the different ways in which TestNG can be invoked? What are the different ways in which TestNG can be used? Invoke in the sense, how can I use it? Invoked. Invoked in the sense, called. How can I call this TestNG? You can invoke TestNG in several different ways. One is using Eclipse. One is using Eclipse, or you can use Ant, or you can use Maven, or you can use it from the command line also. Nowadays, no one is going with the command line. Most of the people going Eclipse with the Maven. So what are we going to use? Anyhow, we are going to use the Eclipse. In Eclipse, what project we created? Maven project. So we don't need to go for using Ant or command line. And now, whenever I said yesterday example, we discussed Apache PUI, which is used for reading the data or writing the data to Excel or from the Excel, right? So whenever you wanted to use some third-party software, whenever you guys wanted to use some third-party software, what we are doing, we are trying to add some dependencies. Similarly, I think you already added TestNG dependency. I think I said you to add when you go for using the assertions. I said if you wanted to use the assertions, assertions are coming from where? TestNG. If you wanted to use the assertions, you should add dependency called TestNG dependencies. You have to add. I'm also giving the TestNG dependency for you guys. You can just copy it and put it in your pom.xml file. Copy it and put it in your pom.xml. Or you can even go here. You can even go here and type which dependency you need. TestNG dependency. Just try to search. So whenever any dependency you wanted to add, any dependency you wanted to add it to your pom.xml, always remember go to mavenrepository.com directly. You don't need to go to Google, then go to TestNG. Directly Maven repository. You can use directly Maven repository. Here you can search. You can search TestNG dependency. Click on search. You see you are getting this. Click on this TestNG. And TestNG is having so many versions. It is having so many versions. Whichever version you wanted to use, you guys can go for using it. Example, see beta version. What is beta version? How many levels of testing we have in manual testing? 4 level. What are those? Unit testing, UAT testing. UAT has how many testing? Beta testing is performed in where? In production environment. Why we do that beta testing? Make sure before it is really impacting to all users, we will give it something called friends and family only for few people. We'll give it only for friends and family. We'll give it for the only to few people. So now see, these guys are using that beta version. What is the beta version? Wherever you see beta version, it is not officially released to the market. They're clearly saying it's a beta version. If you are facing any problems, you go ahead and give them complaint. They will try to understand the issues, fix it. You get some issues from all the users, fix it, and then make it final version. So these all are the final version 6.14.3. Just use this, use the stabilized version. Don't go for the beta version. We don't know if some issue is triggering. Is it triggering because of their version of the software, or it is triggering because of our problem in the coding? We really don't know. Don't go for using the beta versions. Always try to go for using the confirmed finalized version. Okay, you can just copy it here, copy this one, go to your pom.xml file, add it as a dependency. I already added, so I don't need to add it again. Right? How can you disable a test case in TestNG? Now, these all things we will discuss later. So you don't need to do the installation of testing. You don't need to do the installation of TestNG, because you just add a dependency that should be sufficient. Just adding dependency is more than sufficient. You don't need to do install anything. Sometimes for people, even after adding the dependency, it is not working. I realize some of the batch people, they are saying I added dependency, but still I'm not able to do it. In that time, go for using these steps. Go for using this installation TestNG framework. You need to go to these steps. If it doesn't work, then only go for this. Otherwise, it is not needed. Anyway, I'll try to show you how to install it. Just go to Eclipse, click on help, and go to install new software. Click on install new. Don't do this unless if your TestNG is still not working. If your TestNG is still not working, then only go for doing this. Okay. Now here I already given the URL, what you need to type. This is the URL. Just copy this URL from the notepad. I'll put this in the Google class today. Copy this in the notepad and paste it here. So once you guys paste it, you will see TestNG will be appearing here. Okay, once this TestNG appears, try to check this checkbox, click on next. Then again click on next, finish. Your TestNG will be installed. Okay. So how do I know whether TestNG is installed or not? That's what I'm trying to explain here. Select the TestNG, click on the review, select I accept. Terms and conditions, just click on I accept. Ensure installing software dialog appear. Security warning appears, click on OK. Once installation is done, everything is done. Once Eclipse, it will ask you to restart the Eclipse. Once if it is asking you to restart the Eclipse, try to restart the Eclipse to make sure whether TestNG is installed or not. Just under menu, run menu, click on run as option and check. You should see an option called run as TestNG test. If you see this run as TestNG test option, it means that your TestNG is installed. There is run as. Now we will see, because we don't have any program for related to TestNG. That's why it is not showing. Okay. Now TestNG is having annotations. TestNG is having annotations. Example. Now let me give some annotation. These are the annotations what we have in TestNG. These are the total annotations what we have in the TestNG from here to here. These are the annotations. Example. Now, what is the use of annotations? I'm just trying to give you an example. We have one annotation called before suite. People call it as a suite, S-U-I-T. Don't call it as a suite, call it as a suite, not S-E-E-T, not that suite, just S-U-I-T, suite. Okay, clients always say suite, but we people always say suite. Most of the foreign people will call it as a suite, not as a suite. So try to pronounce from beginning onward saying it as a suite. Okay. So before suite, what is a suite? Suite, we in the test link we created one test suite, right? What is that? Test suite contains collection of test cases. Collection of test cases are given inside the test suite. You will always have some collection of test cases, like regression test suite, smoking test suite, automation test suite. So test suite contains collection of test cases. I'll create one test suite called regression. I'll create one test suite called regression, and I'll put all the test cases related to regression. I'll create one more test suite called smoke. I'll put all the test cases related to smoke. I'll be putting it inside the smoke. Okay. So now before suite means a suite contains multiple test cases which I wanted to run. Now, before running any of the test case, you wanted to perform something. Before running any of the test cases, you wanted to perform anything, you need to write that code inside the before suite. So you don't need to write so much logic, which one to execute when. Which one to execute when, that's what annotations are talking about. All these annotations are talking about which one to execute when. Before suite will be the topmost priority. Before suite will be the topmost priority, which will be executing first. Before suite will be topmost priority, which will be executed first. You wanted to perform something before actually your test cases are starting, then go for using the before suite. This like a ready-made. What is the ready-made? They are giving sequence of execution of your test cases. How you wanted to execute your test cases. Example, I wanted to execute something before suite. Every before will also have after. Just give me a minute. Yeah, who's this? Hey, sometime in the training, I'll call back. Okay, every before will always have after. Every before will have after. So before suite is going to execute. If you are putting any coding in the before suite, that is going to execute before executing any of your test case. Before executing any of test case. Every before is having what? After. So at the rate after, every annotation will start with at the rate symbol. Wherever you see at the rate symbol, you need to understand that it is nothing but a test-ng annotation. Even JUnit also, all this JUnit is also going to have annotation. So any JUnit or test-ng, these are the testing frameworks. They always starts with at the rate. They always starts with at the rate. Wherever you see at the rate, you need to understand it is nothing but a annotation. Can be in the test-ng or it can be in the JUnit. It differed, right? So every before as a after. Before suite execute any code I'm writing in an annotation. Any code I'm writing in annotation called before suite. So it is going to execute first. So before suite will be the topmost priority, like what we have in static block. In Java, we discussed static keyword, right? So we have a static block. Static block is the topmost priority. It will just ignore the main also. It don't care the main. First, it will come to static block. It will execute the static block. Then it will go for main method. Okay. Now, before suite and after suite. Before will execute before executing any test case. After suite is going to execute after executing all test case. I mean, before what you wanted to do, after execution, what you wanted to do. Before suite will be first priority. After suite will be the last priority. Okay. Now you also have before test. You also have something called before test. At the rate of before test. This annotated method will run before any test. See, don't think I have to use all these annotations. We generally do not use all these annotations. We generally use only one or two annotations. Not every annotation. Don't think every annotation should be used in your program. It is not a mandatory. Okay. Now you have before test. At the rate of before test. This annotated method will run before any test method belongs to the class inside the test. Now, anything you wanted to consider it as a test case, you have to put that under annotation called at the rate test. At the rate test is one of the annotation. Whenever I say at the rate test, test-ng will consider that as your test case. Test-ng is going to consider that as your test case. Anything you are seeing at the rate test, I repeat, anything you see at the rate test, understand that it is nothing but a test case. Example, I wanted to write coding for login. So whatever the code I am putting inside the login, I'll put at the rate test. Under that, I will write my login code. Under that, I'm going to write my login code. Every annotation must have a function. That's what I'm saying. any line of the code you are going to write, any line of the code you are going to write in TestNG must be inside one of the annotation. This annotation must have one function. Example, now example, I wanted to write one annotation. Okay. Now at the rate test, this is annotation which is coming from the TestNG. Whenever I say at the rate test, what does that mean? At the rate test means it is nothing but a test case. Wherever you see at the rate test, it is nothing but a test case. Every annotation, don't think only at the rate test. Every annotation should have a method. Now, I cannot write coding here like this. I cannot write. So every annotation should have one method, like say login. You can give any method name. Okay, you can give any method name. Always remember, any code that you write it inside the, any code you write it is inside the annotation, that must be a method. Every annotation should have a method. Every annotation should have a method, and whatever code you are going to write, that code you have to put it inside the login. That code you have to put it inside the login. Okay. So wherever you see at the rate test, understand that it is nothing but a test case. Wherever you see at the rate test, understand it is nothing but a test case. So I have to put at the rate of test and give my test case function name and write the coding inside the function. Similarly, if you are putting at the rate of, what is the first annotation? Before suit. Here you have to put some method. Don't think you can write some coding directly inside the annotation. You cannot write the coding inside the annotation. First you have to give at the rate of annotation name, and then you have to provide the method name. Then you have to provide method name. Is it clear? I repeat, any annotation you are using TestNG, that should be inside the function only. Any annotation you guys are writing, that must be inside the function only. At the rate test always indicate it is nothing but a test case. At the rate test is nothing but it's a test case. Okay. Now you also have at the rate of before test. So before test, like say I have don't worry, I'll give you with example. I'll explain you with example so that you guys can understand it here. Logout. How many at the rate tests you have? It means you have two test cases. How many at the rate test you see? That many test cases you have. One is for one at the rate test for login, one at the rate test for logout, right? So you have one annotation which is called at the rate before test. At the rate before test. Now, whatever you guys are having, now I'll write one thing called at the rate of before test, and I'll write some method 2 or some name. Okay, I'll put before test void method 2. It means how many tests I have? 2 tests. Why I'm saying I am having 2 tests? Because I'm having at the rate 2 test annotations. At the rate test 2 annotations mean 2 test cases, right? Now we also have one more annotation called at the rate before test. At the rate of before test will execute before executing any of your test cases. Now what I have here, I have before suite. First it will go and execute the before suite. And after that, I am putting one more annotation which is called at the rate of before test. So first it will execute before suite, and after that it is going to execute before test. It is going to execute before test. So before test method will execute before executing any of the test case. Before test, it will execute before suite. After before suite, it will go to before test. Sequentially how it is going. Then every before will have after. After executing all the test cases, where it will go? It will go for after test. Before, after, before, after. Before executing all, before suite, execute all test cases, then execute after test, then go for after suite. Same thing before and after test also there. You also have something called before groups. TestNG has some concept called before groups. You can create a groups in TestNG. You can create groups in the TestNG and you can run your test cases. You can create groups in the TestNG. You can run your test cases as per the group. You can run your test cases as per the group also. You wanted to execute any test cases before of group, then before group code will be executed. Same after group. Then you also have before class and after class. Before method, after method is the important thing from the interview point of view. So you have before test. You have what? Before test. And you have before method. We need to understand the different. I'll give you the notes, don't worry. As an interview ask question. So people mostly ask what is the difference between at the rate of before test and at the rate of before method. Now before test, how many test cases I have here? 2 test cases, one for login, one for login, one for logout, right? One for login, one for logout. So 2 test cases I have. Before test will execute before executing any of the test case, but it will execute only once. Before starting any of your test cases, before starting off any of your test cases, it will go and execute at the rate of before test, right? I have written some code here before test. This will execute first. Then what is before method? Now I'm trying to put one before method. Let me put one before method. I'll just say void method 3. I'm just giving some function name because I have to give functions only. Okay. Now I have before method, before suite, I have before test. These many before you are having. First which one it will execute? Before suite. After executing before suite, it will go to before test, before executing any of the test. Always remember, before test will execute only once. Before test will execute only once before it is executing the test cases. Now you have something called before method. Before method, every before will have after. Every before will have a after. So your before method, you will also have after method. So let me put one more method for after method. So you have before method and you have after method. Now, how many test cases I have? 2 test cases. Before test will execute only once before executing your test cases, before starting your test cases. Now, before method will execute each and every time for every test case. Before method will execute before executing each and every. What do you mean by before executing each and every test? Example, how many tests I have? 2. Before executing this login, this is at the rate test, right? This is one test case. Before going to the login, what it will do? It will go to the before method. It will go to the before method and it is going to execute before method code. Then it will go to login test case. It will execute the login test case. After executing the login test case, it will come to the after method. Before going to the test case 1, before going to the test case 1, it will go to the before method. It will execute. After executing before method, it will go to the test case. After executing this test case 1, it will go to the after method. It will go to the, let's put it in simple method. Otherwise, I'll just change it to test case 1 so that you can understand it easily. Test case 2. I have 2 test cases. So how many times before method, after method will execute? How many test cases you have? That many times before method will execute. That many times after method will execute. Are you guys getting? If I have 1000 test cases, example, if I have 1000 test cases, what before method is going to do? Before method is going to execute 1000 times. Before method is going to execute 1000 times. After method also going to execute 1000 times. Before method, 1000 times. After method, 1000 times. Before test, how many times it will execute? Only one time. It doesn't matter how many test cases you have. It doesn't matter how many test cases you have. It is going to execute only once. Before executing, it is going to execute only once. And after executing, after test will execute. But before method will execute before executing every test case. Test case 1, before to that, before method will execute. Then it will go to test case 1. After executing test case 1, it will go to after method. Then you have test case 2. Before going to test case 2, again it is going to execute the test case 1. Sorry, test case 2. After executing test case 2, again it will go to after method. Always remember, at the rate of before test, at the rate of before test, at the rate of after test will execute only once. Before executing the test cases and after executing the test cases. It really doesn't check how many test cases you are going to have. But before method, after method, it will always calculate how many test cases you have. That many times it will repeat before and after for every test case. For every test case, not for all test cases in one place. It is going to execute for every test case. That's what it is going to do. Is it clear? Mostly asked question, difference between at the rate of before test and before method. Okay. So where should I use this? Why should I? You're understanding the framework. They're giving how you wanted to execute your test case. That's the sequence they are giving. Before suite, you do something, you wanted to do it. Before test, you wanted to do something. Before every test case, you wanted to do it. After every test case, you wanted to do something, do it. So everywhere they are trying to give you what you wanted to do before, what you wanted to do after. But in real-time project, you will not use all before, after. You will use one or two before, after. Either we use at the rate of before test and after the test, or we use before suite and after suite. Don't think we have to use all these annotation. Why I'm telling you all these annotations? Because from interview point of view, it is required. People will ask you what are the different annotations we have in the test ng. What are the different annotations we have in the test ng? Okay, there are 9 annotations or 10 annotations what we have. Okay, what we use real time, that's what I said, right? Either you use before suite or after suite, or before test or after test, or before method, after method. Most of the time we use before method and after method. So what we are going to do in real time, for every test case, login is mandatory. For every test case, you should log in. You should start every test case with the login only. So I will write one login code and I'll put that login code inside the before method. I will write one login code. I'll put that login code in the before method. Before starting my test case, which one it will execute? Before method. What I am putting in before method? Login. It will log in. Then at the rate test, I will write. Example, add beneficiary, right? And transfer funds, raise checkbook request, pay credit card bills, pay debit card bills, change your PIN. For every test case, what I wanted to run, for every test case, I wanted to log in, execute the test case, log out. Log in, execute the test case, log out. Test case 1, log in, execute the test case, then log out. Go to test case 2. Again, log in, execute test case 2. Execute test case 2 is what? Adding beneficiary. Add beneficiary, log out. Then transfer funds. I'll write automation code for transfer funds. Before method, log in. Then it will execute transfer funds. Then log out. Those are the situations where we use before method and after method. You wanted only one time login and one time log out. You can even do that way. You don't need to log in and log out for every test case. Before starting all the test cases, what is mandatory? Login. So I would put that login code in the before test, at the rate of before test, which will execute only once. When it is going to execute? Before executing my test cases. Before it is executing my test cases, it is going to execute before test. Then after executing all the test cases, after test, what I will put? I'll put log out. As simple as to say. Okay. So we'll write one example by implementing all these annotations except data provider. Data provider, we'll discuss it in the later, mostly maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow we'll try to discuss. Day after tomorrow is what? Friday, Saturday. Yeah, we'll try to discuss tomorrow or day after tomorrow. I repeat, don't think you should use all the annotations. Don't think you should use all the annotation. You don't need to use all the annotation. Use only one or two annotation. That could be before method, after method, or it could be before test, after test, or worst case, it could be before suite and after suite. Okay. Since I already added the dependency to pom.xml file, since I already added dependency to the pom.xml file, I don't need to add it. People whoever is not added it, try to add the dependency. Otherwise, it will not allow you to use the test engine. Okay, it's already given in my notes that I will give it today. Okay, see, I'm using by default, they are giving the JUnit here. Whenever you create a Maven project, by default, they are adding JUnit. I did not add the JUnit, they're adding automatically. I think you can observe, go to your pom.xml, you can find this JUnit by default, they are adding. If not needed, you can delete the dependency, it's up to you. If you have JUnit plus testng, it will create little bit confusion. Whenever you wanted to import, it will show you both the imports. @test is one annotation. @test is available in JUnit. It is also available in the testng. By default, it will give preference to import to JUnit. You're very careful when you are fixing import option. When you're choosing import option, make sure you're importing testng only. Why it is suggest JUnit also? Because dependency is already added for the JUnit. Okay. Now, I said I will give you the project yesterday. No one remind me, right? Yesterday. I already have testng annotations. 2 packages are already created. Let me create one more package. New one. New. See, if you wanted directly, you can go to other. You can see testng class you have. So I'll show you it again. Right click on this SRC. New. It will allow you to create. Let me create a package first. Okay. Let me create a package. I'll put, always remember, package must be small letters. Package must be always in the small letters. Now click on new. Click on other if you wanted. Okay, click on other. Go up and down. This general is not needed. In the bottom, you can see Maven is not needed. You see testng, you have one option here. You have one option called testng. To create a testng file, click on this testng class, click on next. So when I click on next, it is going to show me all the annotations what we have in the testng. We discussed, right? Before suite, after suite, before test, after test. I wanted to include all the annotations. Just check all these check boxes. Click on finish. Now data provider is not needed. So I'll just remove the data provider. After adding dependencies, create one package so that you can understand separate examples related to testng. Create a new package. On the new package, right click, same how you create a new class. I'm saying go to other. Instead of clicking on class, go to other. Click on other, search for testng. You will see this testng once you add the dependency option. Once you added this dependency, you need to select the testng class. Once you select testng class, click on next, it will show you the annotations. It will show you all the annotations, whichever annotation you wanted to take, you just go ahead and take the particular annotation, click on finish. Once you finish, you will get into this one. Now see all the annotations, whichever I'm using, it is importing all the annotations. I'm using all the annotations, so it is importing all these annotations. What are the different ways of importing a package? Or we discussed about packages, right, in Java. What are the different ways to import the packages? That's what we are doing here. What is the package name here? org.testng.annotations is the package. .test. What we are using? Are we using all the annotations? We are almost all using all the annotation except data provider. So what should we do? Do I need to write these many lines for import? Where star? Just put package name dot star. What is my package name? This one. org.testng.annotation. So what I can say, I will delete all these things. In simple, I would put star. Import package name dot star. Is it clear? So how many lines of code is reduced? You cannot put, if you have 1000 annotations, you want to use 1000 annotations, you cannot put 1000 import statements here, which is going to be very lengthy lines of coding. Just use dot star. Now we said before method, data provider, we can remove it. Where are we closing here? So I have put all the annotations, whatever we have, before suite, after suite, before test, after test, and you also have before class, after class. You have before method, after method. What is missing? After method is there, right? Groups they did not add. I think they did not add groups. They have not added. If you wanted, we can add it manually. So what is missing? Groups is missing. Okay. Test cases are missing. Are there any test cases here? There are no test cases. So what I can say here, I can say @ test. So I have to write inside the method. I'll put it as test case 1 for better understanding. So one test case I have. So I wanted to create one more test case 2. I'll put it as test case 2. Now let's say this is for login and let's say this is for logout. No, don't worry, just consider this one test case. For everything, I'm just going to put system.out.println inside test case 1, just to understand whether it is executing or not, right? And then I will put same thing inside test case 2. Inside test case 2. Now where I am in now is okay. Now I have before method. I'm just trying to put, just wanted to show you when I'm using all the annotations what we have in testng. When we are trying to use all the annotation, what is the priority, what it is considering, the priority of which annotation is taking the topmost priority, which one is executing first, which one is executing next, which one is executing in the last. I just wanted to show that. Again, I'm repeating, don't think we have to use all these annotations when it comes to real time. We don't use them. But why I am showing it? I want you to understand the priority of each annotation, which one it will execute first. So test case 1, test case 2, okay, and then you have before method. This needs to be changed inside before method. This would be inside after method. This would be inside before class, and this would be after. This would be before class and this would be after class, and you will have before test, inside before test, inside after test, then before suite, inside before suite, inside after suite. Big groups are not there, you can ignore it. So I almost all use the annotations except groups and data provider. Data provider is altogether a different concept. Data provider is used for the data driven testing. Once we start, maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow, we will try to understand the data provider example. Okay. Inside, now we did all these things. Now, after adding all these things, you have two options. One, only one test case if you want it. If you earlier this feature was not there in the latest versions of the TestNG, they started giving this option. If you wanted to run only this test case, you can run directly here. Now, if you observe, there is, if you want to run all, you also have run all option from here. Understand there is no main here. Did you guys see any main method? TestNG doesn't require any main. TestNG does not require any main. Just it only dependent on the annotations. It's purely dependent on the annotations. It will not dependent on any of your main method. Okay. Now how to run a TestNG? Right click. Previously we used to see run as Java application. Since it is a TestNG, this option you will get only if your TestNG dependency is added. You will get this option only if TestNG annotation is added. Otherwise, you will not see. If you are not seeing run as TestNG means your dependency added successfully, but due to some issues, it is not able to show. In that case, go for installation process. I already given you the installation process, how to install it. Just go for run as TestNG test. Now try to understand which one it will execute first from here. You have test case 1, test case 2, before method, after method, before class, after class, before test, after test, before suite, after suite. Which one will execute first? Before? After that? Before test. Before method will execute when? Before executing the test case. Before executing test case, what it will execute? You have a before test. Before test also will execute, but before test will execute only once. But before method will execute every time. Before method is going to execute every time. So first, which will it execute? Before suite. After that, before test. You also have before class. I doubt whether it will execute before test or before class. I think it will execute before suite, then before test, then before class. And after that, before method, then test case 1, then after method, then again before method, test case 2, and again after method. Just try to run as TestNG test. Inside before suite, inside before test, inside after test. Why? It is strangely behaving. No test found, nothing was run. The XML suite files to run. I think these are the new features they implemented here. Where do you have an option to close this one? There is no option to close this one. Let me run it again and try to see. It is going to want before suite and I think they are forcing to use testng. The full path to the XML files inside the jar only valid if test jar was specified. No test found, nothing was run. Why it is saying no test found? It is going to before suite, it is going to before test, it is going to after test. It is not considering before test, it is considering after test, it is considering, and after suite also it is considering, but remaining all are it is not at all considering, right? Remaining all it is not at all considering, right? It is not even considering test also, right? Let's try to run from here. It will execute only one test case one, test case two. Yeah, now it is executing everything. Now, first what it is executing, I said before suite will be the topmost priority, which it is going to execute. First, it is executing before suite. Then before test, as said, it is going to execute before test. After that, it is going to before class. See, first it is going to suite, then it's going to test, then it is going to class, before class. Then it should go to the test case one. Before it is going to the test case one, where it is going before method, it is executing the before method. First time it is executing. After before method, it is executing test case one. After executing the test case one, it is going to after method. Again, it is going to before method. I said, how many test cases you have, that many times, as many test cases you are having, that many times it is going to, go for before method and after method. So before it is going to test case two, again it is executing, before method. First time here it executed, again it is executing because you also have one more test case two. Inside after method, after executing test case two, where it is going? Test case two. Now it is considering after class, after test, then testng has inbuilt feature. Testng has inbuilt feature to say whether test case is pass or fail. So if the assertion is not matching, your test case will fail. If assertions are matching, it will say your test case is passed. So why it is saying my test case is passed? Because I have, how many test cases it is saying? Test run. So it will not consider all these annotations as your test cases. It will consider only at the rate test. It will consider at the rate test. How many at the rate test you have? It will consider that many test cases. In this example, how many we are having? 2 having. So it is considering only test run are 2. How many failures? 0. Skips also 0. Why it is saying default test case 1 passed, test case 2 also passed? Because I am not putting any assertions. If you put assertions, then only it is going to say your test case is pass or fail. If you don't put any assertions, by default, it is going to pass your test case. By default, they are going to pass all of your test case. Understood what is the priority? When you are using all the, in real time, you don't use all the annotation. Maybe you might get an interview ask question saying, can you explain me the priority execution of testng annotations? If you are giving all the annotations, of testng, which one will be executed on priority? Which one will be executed on priority is your question. Mostly they might not ask you, but in case you need to just, if you want to note down or you take the capture of the screen or remember when you are using all annotations, which one is taking the priority. Clear? Now, mostly asked one more, if you see this green color, it means all your test cases are passed. It means all your test cases are passed. Now, mostly asked question, how do you disable a test case? Example, I have 1,000 test cases. I don't want to run few test cases. I don't want to run few test cases. Example, how many test cases we have? Two test cases. Out of two test cases, I don't want to run one test case. I don't want to run one test case. What we have to do? Make an interview ask question. How to disable a test case? Interview ask question. Make a note. How to disable a test case? That would be the question. Or how to disable a test case? That's the question. Or what should I do? What should I do if I don't want to run? What should I do if I don't want to run? What should I do if I don't want to run one test case? If I don't want to run one test case. Now, as we discussed in TestNG, whatever annotations you are having, all these annotations will take the parameters also. That's I already mentioned here, right? When you are going through these nodes, I already mentioned that. Where was that? We can pass additional parameters to the annotations, like how we are giving the parameters to the functions. Similar way, you can also give the parameters. Similar way, you can also give the parameters to the annotations. Now, what is my question? I don't want to execute some test case, or I wanted to disable one test case. What should I do? I wanted to disable one test case. What should I do? Now, whenever you wanted to provide any parameter, whenever you wanted to provide any parameter to the annotations, you guys can use this opening the bracket. This is how we give the parameters. So you have to say enabled equal to false. You just have to say enabled equal to false. This means by default, all test cases are enabled equal to true. Means when you run all, it is going to execute all your test cases. But if you don't want any test cases, to execute, so explicitly you have to say @test enabled equal to false. Means system will not execute this test case 1. Now you see how many test cases it is saying? 2 test cases. What it is saying? Test case 1 is passed, 2 is also passed. Now try to run it. Just save it and try to run all. Do you think test case will run? This test case 1 will not run. How many it is saying? Which test case it executed? Previously we were having test case 1. Right now we do not have test case 1. Why? Because I said enabled equal to false, which means it will not consider this test case from the execution. It will not consider this test case from the execution. Make an answer. This would be your answer. @test enabled equal to false. @test enabled equal to false. Done. Enabled equal to false. It means it is not going to execute that particular test case. Okay. Okay. @test enabled equal to false. So it will just execute only other test cases. It will not execute these test cases. Okay. Now what I would do, I said I will give it test one thing. Okay. Let me put, this example, sorry, the TestNG notes in Google Class. This is one thing. I said I will copy this complete project. I said I'll put this complete package. Okay, so I will put you this project also. Assertion means assertions we discussed yesterday, right? I mean, day before yesterday. Assertion basically allows you to compare actual result with the expected result. Yeah, you need to create one Apache POI dependency. I already given in the yesterday's class, right? The Maven dependency for Apache POI already given. You open my Java material from Google class, you can find that. Okay. What do you mean by keyword? Okay, so let me put this complete project. Beat the wall. Um, okay, so I put this Maven complete Maven project, and it will include everything. Okay, so just make steps to import a project. Make a note. Tuesday class. We'll see. We'll see it in next class. Okay. So make a steps to reproduce. Not steps to reproduce. Steps to download a Maven project. You guys know how to download Excel? No, the zip file, I have given you the zip file. Okay. You have this Selenium with Maven, it's a zip file. First unzip it, extract and save it in somewhere. After that, go to Eclipse. Now make a step. Step number 1. You made a heading, right? Importing a Maven project to Eclipse. Importing Maven project to Eclipse. Click on File in Eclipse. Select Import. Click on File. Select Import. Click on File. Select Import. Then select expand this Maven. Okay, expand Maven. Expand in the sense it will be like this, expand it. Expand the Maven. Click on existing Maven repository. After expanding under Maven, select existing Maven projects. Select existing Maven project. You can see and note down. Click on existing Maven project, second option. Okay, then click on next. After clicking next, choose browse. Now you already extracted the file, right? So where you extracted, wherever you saved the extracted files, wherever you saved the extracted file, just go to that particular location. Example, I saved it in my desktop. So I have to select this project and click on open. That's all. Okay. Select existing, select a project which is saved in your local machine. Select a project which is saved in local machine. Select the project which is saved in your local machine and click on next and finish. Click on next and finish. Once you click on next and finish, you should see this project. Okay, expand it. It should contain all whatever. Don't confuse. I'm having multiple packages for same thing. TestNG, one for one batch, again one more for another batch. Rather than showing existing programs, I type and show it so that it makes easier to understand. Okay. Yeah. Online. Okay. Okay. Anyone online attended interviews again recently? Did anyone attended interviews recently? I don't think so. They would have attended. Okay. Okay. So we will stop it here for today. Just make sure you try to practice with TestNG example. Though we don't use it in real time, but try to understand by putting all the annotations and write some coding and try to execute so that you guys can understand it. Okay. Johnny, you can unmute yourself.
Sir,
Yeah.
debugging